Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook. Great Voyage. I, the strongest fighter on the Rock's ship. Chapter 91. The blonde old man was seriously injured and fainted, and he fell down. The other three old men saw this and endured severe pain, and hurriedly caught the blonde old man. The three of them were exhausted, blood was flowing out from the wounds on their chests, and a sense of exhaustion was welling up in their hearts. Unable to hold on, they landed directly and placed the unconscious blonde old man next to the old man in white robe. All the scenes that happened, the pirates on the ship, Limlin and Kaido, Shiki and Newgate, and Rox, could see clearly with only their naked eyes. Hey, be good, what a green fire thunder god. The god comes down to earth and strikes 4 times, he is so strong that he can reach the sky. Golden Lion Shiki stretched his neck, with a look of horror on his face, not caring about his image at all. Shiki kept mumbling, never closing his mouth, and the newly lit cigar fell to the ground. This style of green fire thunder god can't even fully capture the color of what he sees and hears. It can be imagined that its speed is so fast that it is almost ultimate. And the power is equally powerful. If he tries to catch it forcefully, he will inevitably be seriously injured. If you are exhausted, you will definitely burp on the spot. Gee la la la, this boy Yulo deserves to be called a monster. Whitebeard Newgate held Kong Yunchi tightly, and after being lost for a moment, he laughed heartily. The embarrassed appearance of the 4 old men suited Newgate's liking. At the same time, he was shocked and surprised by this move and Yulo's strength. When he sensed the power of the green fire thunder god, he was more surprised than expected. Looking forward to what kind of damage this blue fire thunder god move can cause to the 4 old men. Even these 4 old men have very little physical strength left and their strength is greatly reduced. But after all, it is Admiral's combat power. With 4 people working together, it shouldn't be difficult to resist it. Newgate has put his estimate at what he considers to be the most likely possibility. Unexpectedly, even so, he still underestimated Yulo's strength with this blue fire thunder god move. In an instant, the 4 old men were hit, and all of them were seriously injured. Judging from their condition, they still experienced all-out defense. Newgate had to admit that Yulo's strength had surpassed him by a lot. If he were to stand in Yulo's position, he would face 4 admirals who were exhausted and their strength was declining. Even if I try my best, I am afraid I can only contend. It is difficult to gain the upper hand, let alone defeat them in one fell swoop. Ha 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 ha. Rox laughed heartily and wildly. Yulo's great strength and the 5 elders' miserable situation all made him happy. After slaying the celestial dragons and destroying the world government, Rox sees infinite hope. Suddenly, Rox's laughter stopped abruptly. He stared into the distance and raised his brows. The pace of progress was quite fast. It didn't take long, but the road was not close. It seems that guy from Quincy has sacrificed his dignity. Yulo, it's okay, retreat now. Rox's eyes flashed and he shouted to Yulo in a deep voice. Kong and the 3 admirals have long entered his range of perception. The Aeolus pterosaur with admiral combat power has top-notch speed and will be able to arrive in a short while. Now facing Kong and others, I'm afraid they will be entangled, which will be detrimental to them. The pirates who came this time were all elites on the ship. For Rox, every death would be a loss. There are also 3 old men who are sober, and they are really fighting. They are all time bombs. Yulo, who was standing in the air, nodded slightly when he heard the words and responded, then fell down. Rox's decision was not unfounded. He must have sensed that Marine was about to rush back. After all, on the eve of the battle, Rox was the first to sense the situation. Shiki, Yulo, and Newgate did not sense the arrival of the 5 elders. At this time, the heroic Newgate, who was rough but subtle, noticed the situation and remained silent with a sullen face. Shiki, on the other hand, was so excited that he started yelling. What's the matter? Retreat immediately, Captain Rox, such a good opportunity to kill 5 old guys. Shiki's hands were holding Sakura, Ju and Kumu, and they were sharpening their swords. When they heard Rox's words, they suddenly froze. His face was full of black question marks, and his heart was full of doubts and a little unclear. We must retreat, but there is no need to be so hasty. You can definitely kill these 5 old men who have no resistance. It's not too late to retreat. Shiki, you idiot, do you even need to say this? It should be Marine, he'll be back soon. Newgate looked scornful and mocked Shiki unceremoniously. Before Rox spoke, Newgate noticed Rox's micro-expression. As long as you use your brain a little bit, you can make a rough guess. Even Yulo in the distance could quickly figure out that Shiki was still beside Rox, but he still couldn't figure out the situation. As one of the Admiral forces, he is still a cadre in the regiment, but he does not have the brains of a cadre. Except for Golden Lion Shiki, there is no one else. All right, sure enough, after hearing Newgate's words, Shiki's murderous aura immediately stopped. Shiki is not stupid, but his brain is slow to react, and he still understands the priorities of things clearly. Before coming, the plan made by Yulo, Shiki, Newgate, and Rox was to surprise the naval headquarters and harvest a wave of enemies along the way. They had to retreat before Marine came back, so they only brought a few elites with them, not wanting to fight Marine at all. Even the appearance of 5 elders in person was beyond their expectations. But fortunately, with Yulo and Rox, the 5 aging Admiral forces did not cause any big disturbance. World government is not simple. If the 5 elders die, someone will take over. I have to prepare for other things in the next period of time, so I don't have time to pay attention to them. Rox already had a plan in mind, so he turned around and got on the boat. Shiki and Newgate looked at each other, looking helpless. What Rox said was still very majestic. Yulo came over with a smile on his face and thoughts flowing in his heart. What Rox said made sense to him. 40 years later, the next generation of 5 elders will definitely be better than these 5 old men. In Yulo's perception of the great swordsman, he can subdue the demon sword ghost Tetsu, and his swordsmanship is definitely better than that of the old man in white robe. If the 5 elders die today, the world government will definitely be angry. After the new 5 elders take office, they will rush to establish their authority and may go to war. In Rox's words, it seems that he has a plan and it will take some time to prepare. Now it seems that the Battle of the Valley of Gods is coming soon. Shiki, Newgate, you go first, I'll finish it off. Yulo calmly came to the 2 of them and said with a faint smile. G-u la la la. Gia ha ha ha. Shiki and Newgate smiled at each other, patted Yulo on the shoulder, and then jumped onto the boat. Shiki activated the lion fruit ability, and the large pirate ship slowly lifted into the air, leaving Yulo alone on the ruins. Among the 5 elders, the old man in white robes and the old man with blonde hair fainted, leaving only the old man with glasses, the old man with long beard, and the old man in suit. They were not seriously injured and fell into coma, but they were not feeling well either. The 3 of them sat cross-legged on the ground, urging the life to return, trying to quickly stabilize the injury, but to their disbelief, they found that the wound could only stop the bleeding. Whenever the energy promotes wound healing, burning and numbness come, blocking the nourishment of energy. After a while, the injury was not stabilized and the physical strength was not restored. The 3 of them looked gloomy, staring at Rox, Shiki, and Newgate, and boarded the boat one after another, but they were helpless and felt very unwilling. Rox's refusal to kill instead aroused strong resentment and murderous intent in the hearts of the 3 of them. However, my physical strength was unsustainable, so I could only watch as Rox and the others left, otherwise they would have rushed up long ago. Suddenly, Yulo's voice made the 3 of them look over. 5 old guys, doesn't this feel good? Yulo, who was on the ruins, had a sneer on his lips and spoke provocatively. Yulo, you guy. The 3 people's faces darkened, their eyelids twitched with anger, and they spoke through gritted teeth, feeling that no matter how much they scolded them, they would not be enough. At the same time, I couldn't help but wonder why Yulo didn't retreat. I won't talk nonsense to you anymore. Rox pirate means what he says, and he will publicly behead the celestial dragons. But this location has changed. Before Yulo finished speaking, the green fire in his left hand spread and turned into a long whip that reached the sky. He rushed into the room of the pirate ship and dragged 2 celestial dragons down. Ah, ah, there was a cry of terror, and 2 celestial dragons fell down, kneeling on the ruins under Yulo's control. The celestial dragons realized they had landed safely and were about to humble themselves and beg for mercy when a roar suddenly came from them. Ah, Yulo, that's too much. Yulo's words and actions dispelled the doubts of the 3 of them. They were all smart people and knew immediately what Yulo was going to do. PFF'd. Ahem. You deserve to die. The old man in the suit was so angry that he stood up suddenly and pointed at Yulo, but he opened his mouth and vomited blood. The wound that had stopped bleeding was pulled again and began to bleed. Endless unwillingness and resentment, the old man in the suit could only sit down and continue to urge the return of life and restore his injured strength. Lord Five Elders. At the sudden sound, celestial dragons looked up, somewhat disbelieving. They were clearly in the hands of pirates, but they were able to see the Five Elders. Five Elders, are you here to save us? We are going to be saved, we are going to be saved, ha 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 ha. Immediately afterwards, the two celestial dragons, as if grasping hope, begged for help incoherently, going crazy for a moment. They were running around like flies, completely unaware of the situation of the Five Elders at this time. The old man in a suit and long beard clenched his fists, his joints cracking, his body shaking with anger, and his teeth almost shattered. Quote. The leader, the old man with glasses, felt as if his voice was stuck in his throat, unable to come out. He closed his eyes with difficulty. The three of them were in such a state that they could not save the celestial dragons at all. They could only watch helplessly as the celestial dragons died tragically before their eyes. Originally the Rocks pirate, the surprise attack on the naval headquarters, would have overshadowed the public beheading of the celestial dragons. The failure of this operation is a major blow that will bring the celestial dragons' crisis to an end. However, Yulo's actions caused two major events to overlap. The celestial dragons died in front of their eyes, and the Five Elders refused to save them. They were sent back to the Holy Land Mariajoy, and the psychological pressure of the Five Elders exploded. Yulo's move is heartbreaking. It's really annoying. Dogs should be more obedient. Yulo took out his ears, with a look of impatience on his face, pulled out the rapier and chopped it off. Phew, phew. The barking of the two dogs, celestial dragons, came to an abrupt end. Yulo's ears suddenly became quiet. Boom, boom. Killed by two swords, the two headless corpses fell down and fell on the ruins of Naval Headquarters, Marineford. Scandium. Rapier sheathed the sword, and Yulo raised his eyebrows sharply. Ha, Marine. I rushed back, it's a little late. This eelless pterosaur is Admiral Quincy, he's quite capable. On the sea level in the distance, a huge black shadow is moving quickly and has entered Yulo's range of perception. Yulo releases observation haki and instantly senses the aura of the ferocious beasts. Each one has Admiral combat power, which is only stronger than the Five Elders. There is a touch of strong pressure in it, exuding the aura of ancient ferocious beasts, but it is strong and weak, and is very unstable. It must be Admiral Quincy, who transformed into a wind god pterosaur. He rushed for a long time, and his physical strength was too much. Maintaining the beast state seemed reluctant at this moment. Yulo's expression calmed down and he glanced at the Five Elders, but there was no abnormal behavior. The three remaining old men were struggling to recover from their injuries and had no time to be distracted. They seemed not to notice that Marine was about to come back. Yulo didn't have time to linger. He was not confident enough to think that he could compete with Kong and the three admirals. Whoosh! Yulo's body became elemental and turned into a stream of cyan fire, shooting away from the ground into the sky. Seeing Yulo leave, the Five Elders breathed a sigh of relief and relaxed their tense nerves. At this time, their combat power was reduced to 10%, and Yulo never left. They were worried, fearing that Yulo would go on a killing spree. We suffered heavy losses in this operation. Rocks pirate is a serious threat to the world government. The bespectacled old man's voice was heavy and his expression was not much relaxed. As the leader of the Five Elders, he must maintain dignity at all times. Rock's strength is unfathomable, and Yulo is the next Rocks. The old man's glasses had gone somewhere, and he stared at the direction Yulo left, his eyes full of fear. The old man with a long beard and the old man in a suit frowned and had complicated thoughts. They couldn't help but sigh, feeling deeply defeated. The Five Elders have been in power for more than 30 years, and the Rocks pirate is the most powerful enemy they have ever encountered. And Rocks pirate has some special features. Most pirate groups have the idea of threatening the world government, but their strength is average, and it is easy to eliminate them. A very small number of pirate groups have great strength, but have no dangerous ideas. They just plunder on the sea and do not confront the world government head-on. In this way, there is no threat to the interests of the world government. It is just a symbolic conquest and will not kill them all. Only the Rocks pirate has won over nearly half of the powerful people in the sea, making it the strongest pirate group. Captain Rocks is a member of the D clan, and his ideal in life is to kill the celestial dragons and overthrow the world government. Now that Rocks is so strong, if there is another Rocks, the two most powerful players combined will be able to compete with 6 admirals. Coupled with cadres such as Rocks Pirate, Newgate, and Shaki, they will be at a disadvantage in terms of high-end combat power. While the 5 elders were worried, the Marines who came back from a distance were all furious. After Marine entered Yulo's perception range, Marine also naturally sensed Yulo as well. What made them angry was that only the auras of Yulo, Rocks and others were left, and they could no longer sense them at all. Damn it, we're going at full speed, or we still a step too late. Herman's expression was unwilling, and an angry voice came out from between his teeth. He subconsciously punched the function pterosaur on the back. As soon as he recovered from his injuries, he was waiting for this battle to unleash a breath of evil energy. As a result, he ran back and forth without even seeing a single person. For a moment, he, who was already feeling aggrieved, couldn't help but let out a punch. Herman, you idiot! The huge body of the function pterosaur trembled, and Quincy hurriedly stabilized himself and cursed angrily. The punch from Admiral's combat power was not an itch. Quincy was struggling to hold on and received a punch for no reason. He still didn't want to go back. Roar! The function pterosaur roared, venting its dissatisfaction, but its speed did not slow down at all, and rushed towards the naval headquarters. It was so hard for me. Not only did I sacrifice my dignity, I was as tired as a dog. This operation has come to an end, and he must be compensated, and Herman's fellow must give him a good beating. But what Quincy didn't know was that all the treasures in their naval headquarters had been looted. Even his private wealth fell into Yulo's pocket. Judging from the situation, not to mention compensation and pension, he probably didn't even get his salary. Rocks and the others are really cunning, and we were fooled around. Admiral Islet, who behaved calmly, said through gritted teeth, exuding a cold aura. The Marines' full-scale attack was so exciting, and in the eyes of all the countries at sea, it was even more majestic and spectacular. But in the end, even if he was played by the pirates, even his hometown Marineford was turned upside down by the pirates. He has been a Marine for more than 50 years and a Marine Admiral for 30 years, and has never suffered such a humiliation. Naval headquarters Marineford was destroyed, and even veterans who were approaching retirement felt their faces dim. 5 elders, CP0 Admiral, Field Marshal, 7 Admiral Combat Forces, but they didn't stop Yulo, Shaki, Newgate, and Rocks. Yulo has grown up too fast, and Rocks is even more unfathomable. I didn't expect to be able to fight 1 against 2. Marshal Kong stood facing the wind, his hands behind his back tightly clenched into fists. The communications soldier was knocked unconscious by the aftermath of the battle as soon as CP0 arrived. Kong didn't know what happened next. He couldn't understand why 7 Admiral warriors couldn't even hold him back. Kong and Rocks have fought against each other several times. Rocks has the upper hand, but it is not as terrifying. But what he didn't know was that Rocks had been hiding his strength. At this time, their observation hockey sensed Yulo moving quickly. Looking far up in the sky, you can vaguely see a cyan trail. No, Yulo is trying to escape and he found us. Herman's eyes widened and he immediately exclaimed. He was the one who least expected Yulo to escape. The green fire sword wounds on his chest and abdomen made him almost unforgettable, and he always thought about avenging his shame. Yulo is very strong, let Islet chase him and see if he can keep him. Let's rush back first, find Lord 5 Elders, and learn the specific situation of the battle. When things got to this point, Kong was thinking clearly and seemed very calm, not getting carried away by anger. Something must have happened while the communications soldier was unconscious, which made it impossible for the 5 Elders and the others to even leave Rocks behind. You must understand the specific battle situation with the 5 Elders before you can make a decision. He is not a combatant, but a Marine Marshal, the Marshal who leads the entire army. Moreover, Quincy's physical strength was low and his combat power was greatly reduced. He and Herman were unable to fight in the air for a long time due to their abilities. Only Alod was left, relying on the ability of Logia Snowfruit to catch up with Yulo and fight with him in the air. Okay, I'll go after him. If he's alone, I'll give it my all. Hearing this, Iolot didn't have any objections. He nodded solemnly and responded in a solemn tone. If it were Yulo in the past, he would have looked down upon him a bit, but after this battle, Yulo was able to defeat the 5 elders, which proved his strength and had reached admiral combat power. And in his impression, Yulo's fruit ability, the terrifying cyan flame, just restrained his ability. If we really fight, I'm afraid this Yulo will be very difficult to deal with. After Iolot finished speaking, he rose into the sky, his body elementalized, and turned into a blizzard, roaring towards the distance. And Quincy, Kong and Herman, the Aeolian winged dragon, continued to rush towards naval headquarters. The marine fort at the end of their sight grew bigger and bigger in the eyes of the 3 of them. Quincy's flying speed was worthy of the name of the Aeolian pterosaur. After a while, the naval headquarters was in sight, but even this moment felt extremely long to Kong. This is naval headquarters. Kong and the other 3 looked at the ruins below, which was a little hard to accept, and their hearts contracted suddenly. The entire marine fort front island, where there is the naval headquarters, not to mention the ruins, the huge marine office building was all broken into pieces of debris, and it was a ruin as far as the eye could see. If they hadn't been convinced that they had definitely gone the wrong way, plus Marineford, where the residents of the back island lived, had not been damaged. The 3 of them really have to wonder whether this is naval headquarters Marineford. Rocks pirate, they are simply robbers, how abominable. Herman was trembling slightly, his eyes were filled with anger, and his eyebrows seemed to be on fire. The marine office building, Crescent Bay and Square are all symbols of naval headquarters. In the hearts of countless soldiers, it is considered their second home. He believed that any soldier would react like this when seeing the scene in front of him. As a marine marshal, Kong's pupils shrank sharply due to the ruins of naval headquarters. He tried his best to control his emotions and couldn't help but roar in a low voice. He has worked hard for decades, and naval headquarters has devoted half his life to it. Now, in one day, returning to before liberation, it has become devastated. It has suffered a great humiliation, the greatest humiliation in the hundreds of years since the naval headquarters was established as the world government. During Kong's reign, such disasters occurred. Although he could not control it, as Marine Marshal, this was his dereliction of duty and he could not escape the blame. Ho! Facing the devastated naval headquarters, even Quincy, who transformed into a wind god pterosaur, couldn't help but roar. There seemed to be a faint voice coming from their ears, making the 5 elders instantly alert. The 3 motionless old men looked around subconsciously. This scene happened to be caught by Herman's condescending gaze. Marshal Kong, this is 5 elders, Lord 5 elders. Herman was still wondering why the naval headquarters was so quiet. He suddenly noticed movement, immediately observed it carefully, and immediately exclaimed. Quick, Quincy, let's get down. Kong was shocked and followed Herman's line of sight, staring intently. As expected, it was indeed the 5 elders, but the situation did not look optimistic. There were only 3 weak breaths in Kong's perception, and among the 3 breaths, there were also 2 unfamiliar breaths mixed in. 5 elders or 5 adults. Why are the other 2 auras missing from the perception of sight, hearing and color? Before Kong could think too much, the function pterosaur swooped down and fell down in an instant. Among the 3 old men, the old man in a suit looked around and found nothing. Now, even if they were physically strong and could see, hear, and perceive colors, it would be difficult for them to detect Kong, Herman, and Quincy at high altitude. Wow! Suddenly, a strong wind roared from the sky and swept away the 3 decadent old men sitting cross-legged on the ground. What's going on? Where did the strong wind come from? The long-bearded old man trembled, and his relaxed body tensed up again. The aura of the function pterodactyl drove them back in vain. The old man with glasses closed his eyes, and his tone lost its decadence, but his voice remained calm. It's too late to rush back now and can't change any outcome. Kong and Herman fell quickly, the Aeolus pterosaur shrank, and Quincy released his beast transformation. Lord 5 elders, what exactly is this? Kong, along with Herman and Quincy, strode towards the 5 elders and asked, looking quite anxious. But before he finished speaking, when he came to the 5 elders, his voice suddenly got stuck. Hiss, what's going on? Kong, Herman, and Quincy all gasped when they saw this scene. The 3 old men had horrific wounds on their chests, while the 2 old men next to them were in even worse condition and were completely seriously injured and unconscious. In disbelief, the 3 Kongs looked around subconsciously. On the ground nearby, the body of CP0 Admiral came into view. At this time, the 3 people's bodies trembled and they looked at each other, shock filling their pupils. Counting the field marshals, of the 7 admirals, 2 were killed in the battle, 2 were seriously injured and fell into coma, and the remaining 3 were also seriously injured and had no strength to fight anymore. Could it be that Rox has a backup plan? Otherwise, how could Rox, Newgate, Shaki and Yulo have achieved this? The 3 of them temporarily suppressed their confusion and came to the 3 old men, trying to help them stabilize their injuries. The top priority is to rescue the 5 elders, 3 zone ability users. The Grandmaster also restores life and has some accomplishments in recovering injuries. No need to waste your efforts, this wound will not recover in a short time. The energy we used was enough to completely heal the wound, but the burning and numbness prevented the wound from absorbing energy. Before you want to recover the wound, you must eliminate the flames and lightning, otherwise it will be in vain. The 3 old men shook their heads and refused medical assistance. They knew the extent of their injuries very well. When Herman heard this, he felt that this situation seemed familiar. The flame, the burning, is it Yulo? He murmured in his mouth, lowered his head slightly in thought, and only then did he react when he saw his abdomen. Herman raised his head suddenly, with disbelief in his eyes, and blurted out the word Yulo. When Kong and Quincy heard this name, they immediately thought it was impossible. The injuries of the 3 old men were exactly the same. How could Yulo injure 3 admirals at the same time? However, the words of the 5 elders broke their understanding. Yes, it's Yulo. Compared with your burning sensation, we have more numbness, which comes from Yulo's lightning ability. It is also a secret technique that can improve combat power in a short period of time. The old man with glasses opened his eyes and glanced at Herman. His tone was calm and he was used to it. Yulo's swordsmanship is very powerful. This gentleman was seriously injured and fell into coma because of Yulo's gift. He has also mastered Conqueror's entanglement, and his overall strength is already stronger than Newgate's. I conservatively estimate that with Yulo's strength, he can fight against 2 admirals in their prime. The long-bearded old man had a heavy expression on his face, and pointed at the old man in white robe, his tone revealing solemnity. Then, the 3 old men explained in detail Yulo's moves and the battle process. And, it has been emphasized how threatening Yulo is. Kong, Herman, Quincy, the more they listened, the more frightened they became, feeling their own cognition being pressed to the ground and rubbed by Yulo. Yulo. Herman gritted his teeth. After being extremely shocked, endless regret filled his heart. Yulo only wounded him a few days ago, but now he has grown to the point where he can fight many admirals alone. His strength has improved so fast that it is simply astonishing. If he had known this, Herman should have pursued Yulo regardless of his injuries, no matter how high the price was. But now, Yulo has grown up and it's too late to say anything. Kong's face was extremely ugly, as dark as the bottom of a pot. He listened to the 5 elders and remained silent. As a marshal, Kong felt only a little more regret deep in his heart than Herman. It's just that he suppressed it severely and didn't show it. Admiral Herman was recalled to the New World after Yulo's rise. Herman faced Yulo for the first time, and Yulo's strength was already impressive. Kong was different. Yulo had already entered his sight as soon as he appeared on the sea. Although the 2 sides were hostile, to put it mildly, except for the later 3 Admiral, Kong, Garp and others, they watched Yulo grow up. It may sound ironic, but it's true. Don't blame Marine's intelligence incompetence, but blame Yulo's talent, which is too shocking. As Marine Marshal, Kong's experience and knowledge are considered top-notch, but his enemy is Yulo, whose experience and knowledge are too much beyond him. Herman, beside Kong, a somewhat weak Quincy continued to listen with a sullen face. The 5 elders' information about the battle situation showed no emotion other than disbelief. The most important thing, the most threatening thing, is that guy Rox. After the old man with glasses and the long beard finished talking about Yulo, the old man in a suit who had been silent for a long time suddenly spoke. But after starting, the three old men were silent and did not take up the conversation immediately. For a time, the atmosphere became depressing. Kong was shocked and immediately cheered up. This was his old rival. He had already thought that in the previous matches, Rox had hidden strength. After a few breaths, the old man with glasses and the old man with long beard remained silent, and the old man in suit sighed. Oh, let me tell you. Rox had the upper hand with 1 against 3, seriously injuring an adult. In the end, Admiral, who had CP0, used life burn and was killed instantly with a knife. The old man in a suit said, his eyes flashed with deep fear unconsciously. Hiss. Who? Hiss. Who? Kong's breathing became heavier and goosebumps appeared on his skin, but he was still unaware of it. But from start to finish, Rox was playing with ease, and that's not his true strength. As for how strong Rox is, I'm afraid only he knows. When the old man in suit said the last sentence, his voice trembled slightly. After he finished speaking, he couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. So it's just you three, where's Aloy? After a while, the old man with glasses suddenly asked. How could such a major rescue operation be missing an admiral? As soon as these words came out, Kong and the other three were completely stunned. Only then did they think of poor Ayelet. Oops, Ayelet, intercept and kill Yulo. Kong's pupils shrank sharply, and his face turned as white as a sheet of paper. This was really terrible. Hurry up and call the phone bug and ask Ayelet to come back. The bespectacled old man's face darkened, and he immediately urged him urgently. Bulu Bulu. Quincy on the side quickly took out his phone. The blue sound lasted for several minutes, but he was still not connected. No need to dial, it's too late. Seeing this result, the old man with glasses was helpless and could only close his eyes and pray silently. If Yulo alone is okay, Ayelet has a chance to escape, but if the Rox pirate and other cadres ambush, he will have no choice but to ask for his own blessings. Damn pirates, Rox, Yulo. Kong's emotions were on the verge of collapse, his eyes were bloodshot, and his low, hoarse voice contained strong murderous intent. Since Yulo joined the Rox pirate, everything has been out of control. Marine is like a decoration, and it is like a joke when facing Rox and the others. This has almost become a knot in Kong's heart. Only by destroying the Rox pirate can he feel at ease. Only in this way can the situation on the sea get back on track. To this end, Kong can even sacrifice the dignity of Marine Marshal. In the open space of the ruins of naval headquarters, the 6 people fell into a long silence. In the high sky in the distance, a green stream of fire was flying rapidly, drawing out a long trajectory. At first glance, it looked like a meteor falling from the sky. Bulu Bulu. The phone rang. Yulo slowed down and answered the call. Gia ha ha ha, Yulo, how are you doing with the finishing work? Shiki's hearty laughter came from the other end of the phone. There is nothing wrong with the plan I proposed. Yulo responded easily. The green fire wrapped the phone bug to prevent it from being blown to death by the strong wind. Glala la la, if it weren't for the lack of time, I would really like to see the reaction of the 5 elders. There was a sound of scolding, followed immediately by Newgate's hearty laughter. Yulo knew as soon as he heard that Newgate must have snatched the phone bug from Shiki's hand. I will be able to catch up with you in a little while, you first. Suddenly, he noticed that wherever he passed behind him, the remaining warmth of the green fire was wiped out by external forces. It turns out it's him. That's interesting. Yulo released observation hockey and instantly sensed the situation. Where he passed behind, there was an icy cold air moving towards him quickly. This icy aura was the same as one of the incoming Marine Admiral. Yulo, what's wrong? Who is chasing you? Rox on the other side guessed the situation here and took over Shiki's phone bug. Yulo is the person he values the most. Even if he believes in Yulo's strength, he still can't help but ask. Snow Leopard Admiral Aloy, he chased him alone. Captain Rox, I can handle it. Just stick to the plan. Wait for me for a while and I can rush back. After the words fell, Yulo hung up the phone and stopped talking nonsense. With the strength he has shown, there is still some trust. On the other side, the phone caller hung up. Rox didn't say anything. If it was just an admiral, Yulo could indeed handle it. In the distance behind him, a large snowstorm was raging, and Ayelet roared forward. His whole body was completely elementalized, and with the high air current, he was getting closer and closer to Yulo. Where he passed, a cold blizzard passed by, the remaining temperature dissipated, and small drops of water condensed, turning into heavy rain. Suddenly, Eilit's eyes lit up. Yulo's speed actually slowed down, and he started to make phone calls. In a moment, the distance was infinitely closer, and Yulo also entered Eilit's attack range. Even if you find me, this is still a good opportunity. Eilit's eyes turned into a bone-chilling coldness. Whoosh! A blizzard was blowing, the wind was howling, and his speed soared. In an instant, the scope of the blizzard suddenly enveloped Yulo. The cold air of the blizzard swept across, and the small water droplets in the air quickly froze into hailstones, which were carried by the icy airflow and smashed towards Yulo. A wide range of cold air passed by, and the green fire after the elementalization was blown back and forth by the cold air, and the temperature it emitted also dropped. Nature's blizzard, a good ability. Yulo deliberately slowed down, feeling the fluctuation of the green fire and Eilit's ability, with an inexplicable smile on his lips. He has never seen frozen fruit, so he doesn't know its specific abilities, but the coldness of this blizzard is already pretty good. Strictly speaking, Yulo's green lotus earth heart fire has transcended the realm of fruit. The cold air emanating from the blizzard reduces a little of the temperature of the green fire. It is already very powerful to be able to do this. It's not just about Logia's ability, but also about Elote's development of devil fruit. Call, whoosh, whoosh. The violent howling of the cold wind was mixed with the sound of a lot of breaking wind, and hail fell overwhelmingly. Ha 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 ha, good time. Suddenly, Yulo turned around, his speed suddenly increased, and the sluggish green fire boiled again. Fire punch. Green fire lingered in Yulo's right hand, and he shot it behind him. Fierce hot breath surged out, and the green lotus earth core fire spurted out. Suddenly, the cold air around him dissipated directly, and the coldness of the airflow melted away and became billowingly warm. Boom! The blue fire fist sea collided with a large number of hailstones, and the high and low temperatures entangled and offset each other. G. The blending of ice, snow and flames produces large amounts of small water droplets, and water vapor rises high in the sky. One side is cyan, the other side is snow white, with clear lines dividing the sky into two completely different sides. The battle between the positive and the negative is a life and death battle, with ice and snow finally falling into the disadvantage, while the power of Qinglian's inner fire remains undiminished. After completely melting away the hail, it blasted straight towards the source of ice and snow energy not far away. Wherever the fire fist passed, all the flying snow in the sky melted, wrapped in blazing heat, and swept away fiercely and quickly. Eilit's whole body was transformed into elements, turning into a small blizzard to hide, constantly releasing cold air. Call. The air wave came in, suppressing the cold air, and then the hot air rushed in. Eilit released the cold air, and was melted by the heat wave like paper. Eilit's heart sank. The elemental blizzard's body was being hit by the boundless heat wave and had a tendency to melt away. Not good. Eilit's expression changed, he couldn't help but cursed in his heart, and he swept upwards without hesitation. A small piece of flying snow suddenly arose, changed its trajectory, and reached the sky in an instant. The majestic green fire rushed away and disappeared into the sky. High in the sky, the diffuse water vapor slowly dissipated. Yulo's green fire ability is really extraordinary. It just restrains my ice and snow ability. And, it seems that the restraint is beyond the norm. The elemental flying snow quickly gathered and turned into a figure. It was Admiral Eilit. His expression kept changing, sometimes ugly and sometimes tangled. Although I knew that Yulo's green fire had an extremely high temperature, I still couldn't help but feel my heart throbbing after actually feeling it. According to Snow Fruit's information, even if it was restrained by Mara fruit, it would not reach this level. For some reason, when Qinghuo came to him, his instinct told him that he was absolutely invincible. Even when he was about to resist, the flash of heart palpitations seemed to come from Snow Fruit. This was something that had never happened before. He had been practicing on a volcano for several years in order to weaken his shortcomings. Those were the most frightening days. Even if the volcanic magma was restrained, that was about it. What kind of ability is Yulo's cyan flame? Mara fruit's flame definitely doesn't have this kind of temperature. The unknown high temperature flame is really uncomfortable, and it will be difficult to handle this time. Logia snow fruit, I think the person coming is Marine, Snow Leopard Admiral Alote. Yulo had a smile on his lips, looked through the mist, and said with a slight smile. Marine's third admiral, this was the second admiral he met. Judging from Yulo's experience, he is better than Herman and looks relatively younger. Just like the three admirals 40 years later, Aokiji is slightly younger than Kizaru and Akainu. However, the strength seems to be a bit weak. The dignified Marine admiral is also doing tricks of sneak attacks. Then, before Islet could speak, Yulo's conversation changed, his tone was full of provocation, and the sarcasm in his words was obvious and easy to hear. In the hazy mist, Islet saw that Yulo recognized himself and was about to respond. However, Yulo didn't give him a chance to respond, and just mocked him. You. Islet's old face darkened, and he opened his mouth to defend himself, but he seemed to have discovered the truth, and that was it. He had no choice but to swallow his words, snorted coldly, and stared at Yulo with a gloomy face. He did sneak attack, but Yulo also discovered it and fought back. In the first brief confrontation between the two, Islet was restrained by Yulo and was actually defeated. In order to eradicate this threat, I accept the idea of conducting a sneak attack, but I cannot bear to say that I am not strong enough. Damn you, brat, you are indeed very strong, but you are too arrogant. Islet gritted his teeth, his eyes filled with murderous intent, and a chill came out of his body. If Yulo hadn't restrained him and prevented him from acting rashly, he would have rushed forward and dealt a blow. But having said that, Islet was still very vigilant. He could fight one of the five elders alone, and his combat power was no weaker than him. Arrogant. This is the fact. I have the strength. Yulo smiled contemptuously and said firmly, exuding an invincible aura. Starting from injuring Hellman, he had the strength to compete with Admiral, and now he can easily seriously injure five elders. Islet may be younger, but he is not much stronger than the five elders. Coupled with Qingwo's extreme restraint, it will only be easier to deal with him. Haha, you are so confident. If you are too arrogant, you will pay the price. Islet looked disdainful. While he was wary of Yulo, he could not lose his momentum. Snow flow slash. The next moment, the snowstorm started, and Islet stretched out his hands and overlapped them horizontally in front of his chest. To prevent protracted changes, Rock's pirate came to support Yulo, and he chose to take action decisively. Call. The wind and snow were raging in the sky, and the cold snow swirled all over the sky, gathering in the palms of both hands. The icy snow continued to compress, exuding a cold air, and the temperature of the breath was several times stronger than before. You arrogant brat, if you have the guts, you can accept my move. A ferocious sneer sounded. Islet drew out his hands, the compressed ice and snow bloomed, and a blade of ice and snow that was more than 10 meters long suddenly burst out. The ice and snow blade was so fierce that it caused the airflow to churn. It looked like a snow blade, but it contained a strong cold energy, which was no less than ice. Click, click, click. All the impurities in the high-altitude airflow were frozen into ice cubes, and the biting cold air raged, crushing Yulo crazily. Yulo, who was not far away, looked at his expression. The cold air that hit his face was overwhelming, and it invaded the inside of his body along the pores of his skin. He felt the bone-chilling chill, which made him quite surprised. There is something special about being able to become a Marine Admiral. This level of cold is no weaker than freezing. Islet in front of him may have already awakened to the development of snow fruit. If it were other Admiral combat abilities, Islet would be really difficult to deal with, but it was Yulo who restrained him. Yulo's thoughts moved, and the fire in Qinglian's heart began to circulate. The boiling green fire came out of his body, and the cold air in his body dissipated completely. What a snow-slashing trick! Yulo looked disdainful, and the green fire that suppressed the cold air could use any move to defeat the strong with the weak. Dance of the Flame Dragon. Yulo's figure stood still, and the surging green fire rose into the sky, instantly dispelling the cold around him, and the heat wave surged across all directions. The green fire spun straight up and rushed out for more than 10 meters before stopping and turning into a green fire dragon. Roar! The green fire dragon was lifelike, and its body flipped several times, causing heat to shoot out. It roared loudly, and the cold air in the surrounding area fled away. Amidst the deafening roar, a large wave of hot breath rolled in, and all the cold air that hit Yulo was completely melted away. Even the extremely powerful snow slash, which was more than 10 meters long, was shaken away by the roar of the green fire dragon. Seeing this, Islet, who was holding some expectations, couldn't help but sink to the bottom of his heart, and his face became even more gloomy. The terrifying cyan flame, the restraint effect is too strong. Islet lowered his head and his eyes began to flicker. If he continued to fight like this, he would be really frustrated. Marine Admiral's observation haki is no weaker than Yulo's haki, and it's not just a decoration. Yulo and his 2 attacks used almost the same amount of energy, but they were severely restrained by Qinghuo. Just a wave of rolling heat reduced the cold air that was fierce and killing Xueliu. Sure enough, what he expected was true, this was the situation. After the green fire dragon roared, its huge body circled and swooped down in one go. The huge dragon head looked ferocious, opened the mouth of the brazier, and rushed towards the oncoming snow stream. Roar! A thunderous roar sounded, and the fangs of the blue fire dragon bit the snow blade. G. The green fire collided and entangled with the ice and snow, and a large amount of water vapor lingered upwards. As they cancelled each other out, the fire dragon and the snow blade were consumed rapidly, and their shapes became smaller and smaller. Finally, bang! Under the high temperature erosion, the snow blade exploded first, and the cyan fire dragon broke through the snow floe, leaving the 7-meter-long dragon body with unabated momentum. Ialot had already been mentally prepared, but this scene still frightened him. 6 Styles Tempest Kick, armament haki activated, his right calf was pitch black and hard, he performed a spinning flying kick and a white slash. Whoosh! The white slash was as powerful as breaking a bamboo, directly cutting the green fire dragon into 2. In Islet, not far in front of him, the powerlessness slowly dissipated. The next moment, the airflow vibrated violently, and an afterimage passed by at high speed, carrying the biting cold air, and headed straight for Yulo. Logia's abilities are usually external moves. In order to reduce Yulo's restraint effect on him, Islet chose melee combat. In this case, the flame's ability is extremely limited. 6 Styles Finger Pistol. In an instant, Islet's figure appeared in front of Yulo. The dark right index finger, wrapped in white mist, condensed with unparalleled power, pointed at Yulo's chest as fast as lightning. Armament haki superimposes 6 types of physical skills, is not afraid of Qinglian's inner fire, and breaks through the body protecting flame with a sharp thrust of energy. The next moment, Yulo was stabbed, and Ialot couldn't help but be overjoyed. The person involved, Yulo, was calm, and his expression remained unchanged. Clang! When the fingertips were still 3 fingers wide from Yulo's chest, there was a buzzing sound. Islet's right index finger was blocked by force and could not move any further. Despite the armed color and powerful burst of energy, Yulo's body remained motionless. Do you want to show off your armed colors? Snort. Come again. Islet's face condensed, and he was secretly surprised. Then, he made a prompt decision, stretched out his left index finger, and moved cleanly. At the same time, the right index finger continued to explode. If one blow doesn't work, try another. However, it is not that easy. Islet, who is too cautious, only thinks about the green fire and ignores other aspects of Yulo. At this moment, a strong gust of wind came, and Yulo's right index finger came out at some point, and with lightning speed, it met Ialot's left index finger. So fast, so strong. Ialot's pupils shrank sharply, his eyes stared outward, and his face turned pale with shock. Only then did he realize that although the close combat was in his favor and he launched the offensive first, there were also flaws. Boom! The tips of the 2 index fingers touched, and there was an explosion. The white energy impacted together, causing the air to explode. The energy fluctuations raged, the air flow surged and spread, and all the clouds within a radius of several thousand meters were scattered. Clatter, 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 clatter. There was a sound of rapid footsteps, and Ialot stepped backwards, using moonwalk to step on the air, causing explosions of airflow with every step. Ahem, cough, advanced 6 moves. Ialot stabilized his body, blood surged in his chest, coughed and looked at Yulo, his eyes full of shock. It's not that he didn't know that Yulo knew the 6 style taijutsu, but Yulo's advanced use of the 6 styles made him find it incredible. His own attainments in the 6 forms are only advanced. In terms of power, Yulo's 6 forms are only stronger than him. In an instant, Eilit's idea of winning in close combat was shattered from the very beginning. Is this the so-called monster genius? Ha 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 ha, Snow Leopard Admiral, are you surprised? Yulo smiled jokingly and looked at Eilat with very provocative eyes. No matter who you are fighting against, the opponent will inevitably be shocked and shocked. Over time, the opponent's emotional changes became Yulo's bad taste. Eilat was silent, his expression kept changing, and his thoughts were tangled up in his mind. With such a good opportunity, if he let Yulo go, he would feel completely unwilling to do so. After weighing the pros and cons, he released observation haki, sensed the situation in the surrounding area, and determined that Yulo was the only one. He secretly made up his mind to kill Yulo even if he was seriously injured and disabled. Yulo, on the other hand, counted the time and became a little impatient. Rox and the others are waiting for him, and they can't wait too long. In this short time, the intelligence agents lurking in the residential area and across the sea must have spread the news of Marineford's war to the New World. They and the others had to rush back as soon as possible to prevent anyone from harassing Beehive Island. Haha, old man Admiral, why are you whining? If you don't fight, I will leave. Yulo looked at Eilat, looking like he was dormant in thought, and sneered and teased. Although he is very powerful, Admiral can still stop him if he wants to retreat head-on. If it was true that Eilat said that he was here to intercept and kill him, he would be entangled even if he wanted to leave. It would be better to ask him seriously like this. Sure enough, a gloomy and hoarse voice sounded, and the fierce murderous intent suddenly spread out, and it was even colder than the cold air. Haha, want to leave? Yulo, you can't go anywhere, this is your burial place. Having made up his mind, Eilat slowly raised his lowered head, his expression became ferocious and terrifying, and his eyes shone with a cold light. The murderous intention was mixed with cold air, and Eilat's momentum was rising. The extremely cold snow could not stop escaping from his body. Are you tempted to kill? It's kind of interesting. Yulo, who was calm and composed, couldn't help but frown, the corners of his mouth curved, and he murmured to himself inexplicably. There was a gap between his location and Eilat. Even so, he could still feel the cold and pure killing intent. It seems that Eilat is indeed murderous, and the aura soaring in his body is getting bigger and bigger. This posture is going to be desperate. But Yulo is also a little confused. Doesn't Eilat know his record of defeating 5 elders? Coming in such a hurry to die, knowing that he was outmatched, he was worthy of being a Marine Admiral, it was really courageous. But what Yulo didn't know was that Eilat really didn't know. If you want to kill me, then let's try. If you can't kill me, you will die. Yulo relaxed his brows, moved his neck, and said with cold eyes. The other party wants to kill him no matter the cost, and Yulo is not polite. Besides, he probably won't be able to leave unless he kills him. At this moment, the sound of the system came in, making Yulo stunned for a moment. Ding! Trigger mission check-in. Kill Marine Admiral, Snow Leopard Eilat, achieve Admiral's first kill, and get a special reward. The task is successfully checked in and the rewards are automatically distributed. Yulo curled his lips secretly. Killing a Marine Admiral may take some effort, but it is exciting just thinking about it. The system prompts came in time, making Yulo even more motivated. The special rewards that appear for the first time, as well as the rewards for defeating the 5 elders, are enough to further his strength. Yulo couldn't help but look forward to it. The light in his eyes was extremely frightening, and his ferocious beast-like gaze locked on Eilat. How arrogant! Ah! Eilat was furious and roared in a low voice. His body elementalized and turned into flying snow, spreading in all directions. Call! 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 There were bursts of howling, the wind was freezing in the air, and the sky was covered with flying snow. Blizzards were raging everywhere as far as the eye could see. The entire space where the 2 parties were located seemed to have turned into a world of snow. The freezing cold air invaded everywhere and was filled with a cold white air. The freezing sounds of crackling came one after another, and the clouds not far above the head even condensed into ice cubes. In the world of ice and snow, Yulo's figure is proud and independent, and the strong cold air cannot threaten him. Change the natural environment and the fruits will awaken. Yulo raised his eyebrows and muttered to himself in surprise, with interest in his eyes. It's not because of Islet, his fruit has awakened as early as Yulo expected. But when the fruit ability reaches the level of awakening, its power can be said to increase exponentially. Snow fruit is the inferior fruit of frozen fruit, but after awakening, its ability has the characteristics of freezing, while still retaining the tough characteristics of snow. A hurricane formed by countless cold air currents blew violently from all directions. Before it even got close, the biting cold air invaded Yulo's internal organs. The green fire inside his body burned, and the cold air couldn't help but run wild, but Yulo's clothes actually began to condense. Blizzard impact. There was a soft shout in the air, and snowflakes condensed into snowflakes in all directions around Yulo, wrapped in the cold air, and surged over violently like a roaring sea. Ha 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 ha, the power of awakening is indeed extraordinary. But in front of me, it's still a little bit worse. Yulo's laughter was wild, there was a trace of solemnity on his face, and the fighting spirit he had accumulated for a long time completely burst out. This large-scale ice and snow field can barely be regarded as a small natural disaster. If it were replaced by Shiki or Newgate, it would be quite difficult to deal with it. However, Yulo's green fire has restrained it. Although it has not awakened yet, it can't stand the high temperature. Boom! The green fire in Yulo's body boiled, and his whole body was billowing with heat. Before the flame appeared, the heat wave swept over him first. No matter how cold it was instantly driven away by the heat wave, and a hot place appeared in the vast ice and snow. Great flame ring! The green lotus earth core fire cheered for joy, and rushed out in spurts, swirling around Yulo's body, and the green fire Uzumaki spread in all directions. All the white cold air and flying snow along the way have melted away and been replaced by heat. The realm of fire and heat is getting bigger and bigger. Boom! The blizzard like a rushing river hit the green fire with a bang, the sound of sizzling was endless, and the white mist steamed upward. The white mist formed a circle, like a wall of mist, dividing the flames from the cold snow. Wow! Wow! The 8 blizzard horses, under the blessing of the environment, seemed to be coming in an endless stream, one after another. Suddenly, Yulo's observation hockey captured several sounds breaking through the air. Islet's elemental physique flashed constantly in the sky above Yulo. In conjunction with the 8 blizzards below, he condescendingly slashed out 8 blizzard slashes again. Snort! Yulo's observation hockey, sensing everything outside, let out a cold snort. Fire Emperor! The green fire Uzumaki spins happily, the fire intensity and temperature increase sharply, and Uzumaki becomes bigger again. The 8 blizzards burst apart without any resistance. The cold snow that came up became leaderless and automatically collapsed in place. Immediately afterwards, Yulo raised his right hand and raised his palm high above his head. The green fire Uzumaki's fire intensity is high, and the endless flames rise up, spinning upward at extremely high speeds. The 8 snow blades that attempted to attack were directly evaporated by the high temperature as the flames surged up. Islet's figure flashed, turned into a wisp of wind and flying snow, and quickly retreated into the distance. From using his awakening ability to create a world of ice and snow, to snow flow slashing and piling, he didn't take any advantage in this round of attacks. Yulo broke his move and a counterattack was formed. Islet must block this move perfectly. Otherwise, the icy and snowy environment that was favorable to him might be broken. This is a field that he created after spending some energy and activating his fruit abilities with all his strength. Ice and snow. Ah, what? Islet accumulated energy and was about to attack again when observation hockey sensed the past. Suddenly, the spirit trembled. In the white mist in the distance, a large number of green fires rose and gathered. The already hot temperature was rising at a crazy speed. Islet stared intently, supplemented by seeing, hearing and color perception. The fire behind the white mist became bigger and bigger, and he couldn't help but beat his heart. The blazing green fire continued to gather in the palm of Yulo's hand, forming a ball of green fire. As the flames gathered crazily, the cyan fireball grew larger and larger until it completely covered Yulo. The high temperature was constantly compressing, and the cyan fireball underwent a qualitative change. A terrifying heat wave broke out, directly dispersing the white mist, and the hazy firelight suddenly became clear. A huge blue fireball appeared in this world of ice and snow, and appeared in Islet's eyes. Yulo raised his right hand high and dragged it on the palm of his hand. His whole body was bathed in the firelight, like a fire god descending to earth and looking around. The huge green fireball was like a sun. Just looking at it from a distance, the boiling flames on the surface made people shudder. Yulo's tall figure looked extremely small under the blue sun, but exuded an invincible aura. Even in a world of ice and snow, my fire still shines brightly. The white mist completely dispersed, and Islet's pupils reflected the cyan sun. Such a strong energy fluctuation, how is this possible, how is it possible? Islet's heart trembled, his face showed a look of horror, and he muttered to himself in disbelief. As soon as his observation hockey got close to the cyan sun, the terrifying energy fluctuation instantly shattered his perception. The energy contained in moves of this level is even stronger than his awakening ability. Moreover, such a high temperature did not affect the environment and formed a natural field. This shows that Yulo's devil fruit has not yet reached the level of awakening. It is also the fruit of Logia. Why is Yulo's fruit so much more powerful than his? Z, G, G, G. At this time, a series of subtle sounds brought Iluo back to reality. His mind was suddenly shaken, and he hurriedly checked the situation. His face changed drastically, and then changed. His expression was extremely ugly, as if he had eaten shang. Because his awakening realm is slowly melting, and the cold air and ice contained in it are also slowly passing away. In his own realm of awakening, facing the huge cyan sun, he felt invincible. If the awakening field is broken, the only advantage he has is gone. What can he use to compete with Yulo? A fruit, hockey, and physical skills are not weaker than him, or even stronger, Yulo. Awakening realm, nothing more than that. Your Majesty Admiral, prepare to receive this gift for you. The ice and snow realm melted, and the time came to take action. Yulo shouted coldly, and the cold and biting murderous aura seemed to become hot. Boom! The cyan sun moved. Yulo lowered his right hand, the giant great fireball boiled and burned, and hit Islet. With this impact, the boiling green fire suddenly became restless, the hot air waves penetrated the blizzard, and the heat breath continued to sweep across all directions. The melting speed of the ice and snow field suddenly accelerated sharply. Not good. Islet cursed secretly, sensing the danger, and subconsciously wanted to avoid the attack, but found that there was nowhere to hide. In front of the cyan sun, he is also insignificant. As long as he is within range, this attack cannot be avoided. Damn it, Pirate Yulo, you got your break. 6 styles life burns. Ah, Alot's face was ferocious, his eyes were bloodshot, and he yelled crazily. He must stabilize the ice and snow realm, this is his only advantage. Under normal conditions, if he were to carry out this move forcefully, the ice and snow field would break open, and he would also suffer serious injuries. Now that life burning is activated, the combat power can skyrocket in an instant. Although it requires a high price, compared with the former, the loss is minimal. Burning life's strength has greatly increased. It can not only stabilize the ice and snow field, but also catch the cyan sun, ensuring that it is least injured. Ilote's robes fluttered, his skin began to turn slightly red, white smoke emitted from his body, and his majestic vitality poured in and turned into his own strength. Call, call. The intense cold air and flying snow swept across the realm again, and the melting ice and snow stopped one after another. However, the icy cold air only stabilizes the field. It is still a bit unrealistic to block the cyan sun. Aha, aha, aha. The aura on Islet's body was nearly twice as powerful, but he still did not dare to be strong. The blue fireball like the sun had no choice but to retreat straight back. Of course he knew it wouldn't help. It was just giving him time to fight back one after another. At the speed of the cyan sun, it was getting closer and closer to him. Although the fireball was huge in size, its speed was not slow at all. Snow wall, snow wall, snow wall. Islet's physical strength was running, and while his body retreated violently, he used a large amount of cold snow power to form countless defensive barriers. One after another, countless snow walls, under the domineering impact of the blue sun, all of them, without exception, fell apart at the touch of a touch. However, Islet was not willing to give up. When he came to the edge of the field, he braked and stopped. We can no longer retreat. If we retreat outside, the ice and snow realm will be destroyed. He braced his legs firmly, and Iolot's face turned red, and his muscles all over his body were tense. Display your armed colors, Iolot roared, the veins on his neck and forehead bulged. He pushed forward hard with both palms, and armament hockey came to meet him. Bang! The invisible impact of the armed color outwards hit the surface of the cyan sun, but it only set off waves and did not shake the cyan sun at all. Seeing that hockey's impact was ineffective, he directly condensed armament hockey and turned it into an invisible wall in front of him. Boom! The cyan sun hit the invisible barrier, making a loud noise, and a large number of sparks flew everywhere. However, for the huge, cyan sun, these are just a drop in the bucket. Sure enough, after hitting the invisible wall, the cyan sun paused for a moment, and Iolot felt as if the mountain was overwhelming him. Immediately afterwards, the impact force did not diminish and it was crushed directly. Under the huge force like a mountain, Iolot's body was pressed, and the bones and joints of his limbs creaked. Well, Iolot clenched his teeth, his muscles bulged, his veins popped out, and his roar trembled slightly. Even if the life burning is turned on, facing the huge impact of power, it is still almost impossible to resist. He thought a little too simply. The invisible armed barrier resisted the green fire without breaking, but the impact of such a huge fireball falling quickly might be something he couldn't bear. If you continue to persist, the bones and blood vessels in your body may burst. Immediately, Iolot let go and withdrew his armed defense. Boom! The cyan sun rolled over mercilessly, its blazing hot breath beating against Iolot's body. Aha! Igloo! Snow cave! Iolot burned his life crazily, some of his hair turned gray, and he mobilized all his strength to defend himself. In the huge ice and snow field, countless cold winds and ice and snow rushed towards him. The cold wind was howling and raging, blocking the blue sun, but the effect was minimal. A large amount of ice and snow came over, compressed and superimposed, and finally turned into two semicircular snow shields, protecting Iolot. The cyan sun hit, and the blazing flames engulfed Iolot. Boom! The cyan sun, which contains high temperature, blooms brilliantly in the high sky, like a volcano erupting. The boundless sea of fire, wrapped in hot air waves, surged and surged, sweeping across the entire ice and snow field in an instant. The barely supported field of ice and snow shattered with a crackling sound, and the power of the green flames continued unabated, rushing towards the outer space with an unstoppable force. A radius of 1 kilometer was filled with green fire, and the scorching temperature baked it, turning it into an endless realm of fire. After Iolot defended himself, the cyan sun engulfed him. As soon as it came into contact with the flames, the igloo and snow cave began to melt rapidly. Qinglian's earth-heart fire's restraint on snow is really beyond common sense. Even if his strength greatly increases and he mobilizes all his fruit abilities to compress the ice and snow to ultimate, he can only resist a few breaths, and directly break the defense after a few breaths. Iolot, who was in the sea of fire, activated the 6 forms of iron body and armament hockey to defend himself from head to toe. Covered by armament hockey, it effectively resisted the burning of Qinglian's core fire and the high temperature, but it was helpless. A large amount of water in his body evaporated in an instant, his physical strength dropped significantly, and even the effect of life burning was affected. As the cyan sun exploded, the raging flames wrapped in a violent heat wave completely engulfed Iolot's figure. The barely maintained armament coverage was directly interrupted by a violent impact. Without the protection of armament hockey, his iron body, a 6-style defense technique, was very ineffective. Although it can withstand impact, it cannot withstand flames. Fortunately, the cyan sun exploded and turned into an endless sea of fire. He took staggering steps and moved outside despite the burning of the flames. But what he didn't expect was that this sea of fire seemed to be boundless. Even though he was almost exhausted, he never stopped, and he still couldn't see the end at a glance. Of course, Iolot could not have imagined that it would be too difficult to escape from this sea of fire with a radius of a kilometer above and below based on his current movement speed. Yulo stood in the sea of fire, with flames beating around his body, but they couldn't hurt him at all. Haha, it's almost over. Yulo's observation hockey sensed the sluggish Iolot on the other side of the sea of fire. The corners of his mouth kept curling up, as if there was something that made him happy. In the blazing sea of flames, Yulo's figure moved and slowly walked towards Alot. Clatter, clatter, clatter. Apart from the sound of burning flames, there was the sound of Yulo's footsteps, which could be heard very clearly in the sea of fire. As Yulo moved, the flames wherever he passed seemed to have met the master, and they swayed and bowed down. Ah, ha. His Ayalot's body trembled, sensing Yulo's arrival. Abyss-like fear struck him, and his breathing became rapid. He stopped escaping and turned around with difficulty. Yulo, who was walking slowly, was like a shinigami from hell, making the hairs on his body stand on end. The cold and pure murderous intent hit the depths of his mind, as if his soul was imprisoned. He wanted to rise up to resist, but found that his body and limbs no longer obeyed his orders. The highest combat power of Naval Headquarters, Admiral Alot, this is it. Yulo came to Ayalot and looked at the embarrassed Marine Admiral with a look of disdain on his face. One of the 3 admirals in the Naval Headquarters, he is vulnerable in his hands. You can't blame Alot for being weak. It's because Yulo is too strong, and he just has the ability to restrain him, so he performed such a trick. The 3-move Admiral, 3-second real man. Ayalot's clothes were ragged, and not a single piece of skin on his body was intact. Even a few body parts were directly elementalized by the sea of fire. Yulo stopped in front of him, and his sarcastic words were like a hammer striking deep in his heart. Ayalot's body and mind trembled, and he climbed up from the bottom of the abyss, with a glimmer of light in his dim eyes. He, Pirate Yulo, you monster, everyone underestimates you. But so what, pirates like you will be killed by the just marine. Aha! Ayalot had a ferocious smile on his face and roared in a low voice, as if he was delivering his last words. However, suddenly, he roared violently, and the brilliance in his eyes turned into a strong murderous intention. With a cry, a cold wind blew by. Ayalot suddenly burst into flames, and the elements turned into a blizzard, attacking Yulo in front of him. Even if he has no strength to fight anymore, he will still risk his life. Either Yulo will die or he will die. HMPH, naive. Yulo snorted coldly, a cold light burst out in his eyes, and his expression remained calm. Since he dares to stand in front of Ayalot, he can deal with various means. He is still unbeatable in his prime state, and it is strange that he can accomplish anything in his severely injured and weak state. Yulo waved his hand gently, armament hockey was released, and the weak Ayalot hit an iron plate. Puff! Ayalot spurted out a mouthful of old blood, his elemental state was instantly lifted, and his whole body was ejected. Yulo's body was filled with murderous intent, his eyes narrowed slightly, taking advantage of this opportunity to kill him while he was sick. After killing Ayalot, we still have to rush to meet up. 6 Styles Finger Pistol Fire Dragon Power. Yulo activated the 6-stage body technique. White energy lingered on the index finger of his right hand, and traces of green fire condensed on it. With a whoosh, the figure disappeared on the spot, and a flash of blue-white light approached Alot. Thanks for watching, please like and subscribe.